Matthew here from MiniWargaming.com, and it's time for another Sit and Talk. If this is your first time watching, this is the show where you can ask me anything about wargaming, business, or might even get personal, such as politics or religion. So if you're easily offended by topics such as religion, then I ask that you do not watch this show, because sometimes people ask, and I will answer. And if you want your questions or comments answered, make sure you leave them in the comment section below. Unless you're watching this on YouTube, then click the link in the video description below and leave them there. I will be doing a free 45-minute sit and talk right here, after which we'll do an extra 30 minutes for our Vault members, which will be at the link below as well. If you're a Vault member and you want your question answered in the Vault segment, still leave it on the free part, and that'll have the best chances of it being answered. And then, of course, sum up any questions that you want answered, because I take the top 10 and then I take random ones after that. For some reason, the printer printed it off really small. So if it looks like I'm straining to read, it's because that's what it did, and I just didn't want to spend all the time to figure out how to not make it do that. So let's jump right into the questions. Stealth Badger. Hi, Matt. 1, if Tyranids were able to choose which other race to eat, what race do you think they'd pick as the tastiest? Well, I think every hive fleet would have its own preference, just like every person has their own taste. For example, like if you're a mushroom lover, then orcs, obviously. If you want like more exotic flavors, then you're looking at Eldar, or if you really want spicy flavors, then you go for like Dark Eldar. Humans are kind of like your, I picture them as just kind of your steak and potatoes kind of thing. It's a good fallback, and there's plenty of them in the galaxy. So whenever you just feel like a regular meal and you just want comfort food, just go for the human worlds. And then, you know, all the other times you kind of see what else you can do. Then there's certain races where it's just, they're really acquired tastes, like the demons and Necrons, which the Tyranids can't technically eat. And so some will pretend that they like it, and they'll call it a delicacy, which is just another word for food that's really disgusting, but once you get used to it, maybe you think you like it. And so there would be some of them that we're Necron connoisseurs and know just how to make them just right and consume them, even though really it does nothing for them. So I think that's kind of the way it would look. So, and then 2, what do you think each race would taste like? I think I just went through that already. Matt Stew. Hi, Matt. What is your favorite single miniature model and why? Whether because it looks, fluff, first one you painted, etc. I've had this question before. Not enough to make it an FAQ. I know some people have been saying, why don't you do FAQs? And it's just because I don't, whatever. Sometimes I think of them, sometimes I don't. I don't really have a single favorite miniature. I like the 40K and fantasy range a lot. I think they have a lot of good miniatures, but I can't think of one that's really stood out to me as being my favorite miniature. Fluff-wise, even, I love the Tyranids fluff, but I actually don't like their miniatures. It's taken a lot of getting used to for their aesthetics. Just not a big fan of the aesthetics of the Tyranid models. And so it kind of goes back and forth. So I'd say I don't really have a favorite one. I love collecting them. I love having vast collections of all these models and seeing them on the table in large amounts, but there's no one single model that I'm like, yeah, that is my favorite. There are lots that I look at that I think those are really cool. Rablo92, does everyone have a phrase in the office? Chris has the what have you phrase. What does everyone else have? Does Chris have the what have you phrase?
Not really, that's just
was that just last week?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that's a phrase, that's more like a speech impediment or...
A speech impediment?
Yeah, I don't know, it's one of those foibles, right?
Well, I know like Dave says he loves his life. Maybe that's one. For me, I always end the videos in happy wargaming. But no, I can't, I'm sorry. I'm also a little tired right now, so coming up with creative things where I just make it up on the spot, not gonna happen today. Battle Cap Iron Blood. Hi, Matt. So the new Star Wars teaser was dropped Thursday. What are your thoughts? Are you as excited as I am? Judging by the look and feel of the trailers, do you think it's heading in the right direction? Thanks. Love the show. Yeah, that teaser was pretty awesome looking. Now, it's just a teaser, so really doesn't give you any information as to how good the movie is going to be. Like, it was cool to see Harrison Ford in there. It was cool to hear Mark Hamill voiceovering it. And it was cool to see the lightsabers and some of the characters. And it's also nice to know that George Lucas is not the one doing it, because honestly, it's too bad, because he's the one that created it. Like, he is the creator of Star Wars, and so it's just too bad that he couldn't continue to make movies about them that were any good. So it looks promising, I'll say that. The teaser, there's nothing in it that I could really fault. And so yes, I guess it looks like it's heading in the right direction, but it's still just a teaser. So it's hard to say. We'll have to wait till it comes out. I know I'm going to see it, even if before I see it, it's got like 1% Rotten Tomatoes and everybody says they hate it. It's just one of those movies that's going to make a lot of money because everybody will have to see it at least once. And then everybody who hates it will still buy the collector's edition when it comes out. That's just the way it works. It's so much a part of our culture now that you just can't help but do it. And let's face it, Star Wars, as much as the movies haven't been that good, all the other part of the franchise have been good. The animated series was really good. They have a lot of good books. They have a lot of fantastic computer games. They've got some bad ones too, but there's a lot more to the Star Wars franchise than the movies. I'd say the movies, as much as they're they're more like the introductory part. They're the part that gets people into everything else about Star Wars. So, Carl 4T7. Hey Matt, I really love the bat reps that have 3 or 4 players involved, especially the Halloween special you guys did a while back. Any chance that Mini Wargaming could do a 4-way battle with all 4 marks of chaos going at it? I'm sure that could happen. There's no plans though, I'll say that. Also an idea for a fun narrative campaign, Life of Pi, the story of Deffy. One for Dave, obviously. Love your work, keep it up. Yeah, we don't often do things with more than one player. Now, just recently we posted, like this week, you've already seen it since your question was asked, where we had a couple 2v2s because we had a large group of guys come in, and so it just, in order to get them all involved, we did some 2v2s. So that'll happen occasionally. And for the upcoming narrative campaign, there will be some multiplayer ones. That'll be fun. But for the most part, I'd say the majority of our battle reports will always remain one-on-one. Because for one thing, it more accurately represents what most people experience with it, and also just a time thing. Obviously, if we have 4 people, we could be, and 2 of them are employees, and if they just make videos together, not only does that game take longer, but if we split them up into 2 studios, we could get 4 times as many battle reports done, essentially. Because when you do 2v2, you're going to take all day to do one game, even a smaller one. Whereas you split them up into 2 studios, and each studio they can get 2 games done in a day. So that's going from 1 game to 4 games. Sure, that 1 game is really cool, and that's why we do them occasionally. But just kind of keeping up our release schedule of battle reports, that's the way we need to do it. The Rabbi Ryan, I just wanted your thoughts on this kind of sort of defensive Death Star Necron unit. It will contain an Overlord with War Scythe, Resurrection Orb, Phase Shifter, and Nightmare Shroud, Auric and the Diviner, and 10 Sword and Board Lich Guard. That's the Shield Lich Guard, which will all be part of the Decurion. Firstly, everyone has some sort of invulnerable save with the Overlord and Auric having a 4+ and Lich Guard of 3. Then they all have 4+ reanimation. And then Auric being a Cryptek will keep it at 4+ even with insta-killing. And then Auric allows rerolls for saving throws of 1, while the Overlord will always allow rerolls for reanimation rolls of 1. The Res Orb will help if all things go really wrong. There's a lack of shooting, but it only costs around 650-ish points. I think the benefits above will make the super resilient, so they can easily get into close combat with their AP2 and AP3 weapons. Just wanted to hear your thoughts. Yeah, it's definitely a really good Death Star. The only problem with it is it's very immobile. You'd have to stick it in a Night Scythe to get it somewhere on the table that would be useful. And then yeah, it'll definitely be able to do a lot of damage. Lich Guard, I've just noticed like a unit of Lich Guard, even not the shield ones, but the War Scythe ones. If you use cover to your advantage, and you have an Overlord attached to it, they'll deal a lot of damage to whatever they decide to get in combat with. And so the ones with the shields just have the added benefit of having a 3-up invuln, so even when they're out in the open, they'll most likely be staying alive really well. Rare WX7. Good morning, Matt. I'm writing to elicit your feelings on 2 intellectual property issues as they apply to your business. First, how do you feel about copyright ownership in the bat reps you produce? It's been a point of contention among my gaming group how much of the value of battle reports is brought by your guests, and whether or not that impacts how you deal with your guests. How much of the mini wargaming bat reps do you think are fairly attributable to your guests? Well, our guests are what allow us to create the battle report, so they're very important that way. But without diminishing the importance of the volunteers that come in, I think still the main draw for the games themselves are the employee who's playing them. And the reason I can say that is because I can track it employee by employee, and I'm able to see that there's a trend. Each employee has a trend for how many Vault members they get in a battle report. And I'm not going to share those numbers or how they rank or anything like that. That doesn't really matter. But all those numbers stay fairly consistent regardless of who they're playing against. And now occasionally we'll see a certain battle report that does better than others, but often it's hard to say if it's the person or whether it was the battle report, because it turns out that it was a really fantastic game, or they played an apocalypse-sized game, and so that's obviously going to inflate it. So our guests create tons of value for us because they are what allow us to create pretty much twice as many battle reports as we could create without them, and then they bring in a lot of variety as well. Intellectual property-wise, though, it is 100% still mini wargamings, and the main reason, two main reasons: one, because they're volunteering to come in, and two, because they actually signed a video release form, basically saying that they have no claim to it. And as much as that might sound, some people might be like, "Whoa, you make them do that? Shouldn't they get some sort of royalty or something?" The thing is, it is very common practice for, if there are volunteers or people that just want to be in the videos, for them to have to sign the video release forms just so they can be in that as well. And let's face it, sometimes people get the illusion that we are some sort of huge company with tons and tons of revenue. And while we have been doing well in the past couple of years, revenue-wise, it's still not huge amounts of money that would allow us to compensate everybody who comes in. Like right now, what we do, we try to thank them as much as possible. We provide lunch. We even have some merchandise that we give out, like tape measures and dice, just to say thank you. But I even had a Facebook comment saying, "Would you how do you arrange transportation to or from an airport, or all that kind of stuff?" And the answer is, unfortunately, we can't really afford to do that. If we added in all those extra costs, we might as well just hire extra employees and just be able to more consistently produce battle reports rather than relying on the sporadic arrival of volunteers on their schedule. And so it's just the way that it, at least for now, needs to operate, just because any other way, and it wouldn't be profitable as a business, which means we wouldn't be able to do it. But legally, to answer your question with intellectual property, it's 100% owned by Mini Wargaming, mainly because, well, even if they didn't sign the video release form, there's still the implication that they were volunteering and they understood that they weren't getting compensated for it. But the video release form cements that idea. Then your second question is asking about what we do, and I just answered that with a video release form. Lastly, thanks for doing what you do. I greatly appreciate the quality and volume of the work you guys do. Keep up the good work. Vault member until the US annexes Canada. Thanks, Obama. Well, if they annex Canada, we could still keep going with Mini Wargaming. I don't see why not. We can instantly raise Vault membership prices just by switching it to US dollars rather than Canadian dollars, and it goes up by 20%. I hate Necrons. Made this account to specifically comment on something that someone else had written. That Necron Death Star unit is so lame. After calculating the numbers, the Lich Guard in that unit will have an almost 91% survival rate. The math is weird, but I'm pretty sure it's right. So you have your 3+ invuln, and then you have 4+ reanimate. I know he said he won't use it all the time, but the fact that a unit has the potential for this survivability and the rest of the army isn't far off is a prime example of why the Necrons are messed up. Hashtag GW, please end this madness. I don't understand why everybody thinks that this is something that's new. Yes, I agree that the Decurion detachment in the Necrons is overpowered, to the point now where I've played enough games with it and seen the comments for it that we're probably going to maybe go as far as to have a house rule that bans it in our battle reports, or at least limits it. Because if you have like a 2,000 point army and you bring in a Decurion detachment as your maybe 1,000 points to that, and then the other 1,000 points is something else, then that kind of brings it down. Or if you do a Decurion detachment and you bring 2 or 3 Catan, that's going to kill a lot of the overpoweredness of your Necron list. So there are ways to kind of bring it down, but it's hard to build, because I always like to scale my armies, but when you build a Decurion detachment, it's hard. It's hard to build a bad one because they're just so powerful. I think the main issue that we have is the way reanimation works. It just makes everything so survivable. If you stripped out reanimation, the Necrons still have plenty of power. They would just have a lot less survivability. And I think that's the big thing, because if it was just like feel no pain, then it could be negated, because there's ways around feel no pain. But because the only way, the only thing that happens when they're insta-killed is that it goes from a 4 up to a 5 up. That's not a big deal. That's really not a big deal. If you don't have the Decurion detachment, however, and you're playing Combined Arms detachment, then all of a sudden you have to pay extra points to get the bonuses that the Decurion gives you. For example, if you want 4 up reanimate, you have to bring Cryptex, or you have to bring Illuminor Caesaris to give it in a bubble. but you're paying extra points. And those points will also do other things, but really the cryptex don't do a whole lot other than provide that 4-up reanimate. And yes, they have other upgrades and stuff, but you're paying for that. So you're paying extra points rather than just getting the bonus for bringing formations and a detachment that's already good. But okay, let's back up though. My point is, this is not new. There have been problems with overpowered codexes for as long as I have been playing 40k. I remember when the Imperial Guard came out with their leaf blower list, all of a sudden they had access to so many vehicles, everything. They had veterans and chimeras galore, and no other army could deal with that because at the time there was no good way to deal with mass armor. And then new codexes came out, and lo and behold, more and more anti-armor stuff was introduced to the point where all of a sudden now the Imperial Guard are not one of the top tier lists anymore. In fact, they're one of the mid-tier to lower tier lists because everybody has mass ways to destroy vehicles. Like just looking at the number of haywire or automatic penetration or just higher strength weapons that armies can now take and spam, it just makes the Imperial Guard not as good as they used to. And then 6th edition comes out and introduces flyers. And the flyers all of a sudden became the thing that if you had and your opponent didn't have, that you were super overpowered. And in between, a lot of other codexes came out. When the Grey Knight Codex first came out, it was just, and it still is powerful, but back then it was just unstoppable. It was ridiculous how powerful the Grey Knights were when they came out. And so, and not every army was like that. Certain armies would come out and they'd be more balanced, or some of them would just be crappy. But my point is, people seem to be talking like this, like it's something new. Like the Eldar are coming out tomorrow, and everybody's already complaining about all the D weapons. Are they going to be overpowered? Probably. But this is not anything new. And so what you have to do, if you're a tournament player, then there's two ways of looking at this. You can look at it as a tournament player who's a win-at-all-cost player, not in the bad way, but like in a I want to go to a tournament, which means you need to kind of take on the win-at-all-cost mentality and trying to build a really good list. Doesn't mean you have to be a poor sportsman. It just means that you build the most powerful list possible and you try to win at all costs without breaking rules or annoying the heck out of your opponent. And so if you're that kind of player, then all you need to do is pay attention to what's coming out and learn how to counter it. Now, the problem with this is that sometimes it requires spending money. Often it requires spending more money. And that's where people have an issue. It's like, okay, well, they just changed the meta, so now you have to spend all this money. Whereas I've talked about this in the past for games like StarCraft, when they changed the meta by rebalancing things, you don't have to spend any more money. You just have to learn new tactics. And so that is a bit of an issue, or a big issue, if you've spent tons of money on an army and all of a sudden it becomes obsolete. And so the other way to look at it, and the way that I prefer to look at it, is a more casual, having fun with the game kind of way. And this presents challenges because not everybody's going to look at it that way, or not everybody's going to realize how powerful their army is. Like, they'll play it, and like I remember playing the Necron versus Nurgle game that's already gone up, and it was a grind. And so, spoiler alert here, it was a grind, and it felt like I was losing. And in the end, I won, and when I looked at it, I actually had quite a bit of my army left. But I remember the feeling for the entire game felt like I was losing. So even as a Necron player, I didn't realize how strong my list was being. All I could see was how tough it was to beat his Nurgle army. And so some players, even when they're trying to play for fun, don't realize the strength that their army is bringing to the table. They can only really focus on what it's not accomplishing or what their opponent is accomplishing. And so, yes, I would love Games Workshop to balance the rules. I would love them to stop with this codex creep thing and making it like, I remember when we did the Necron reviews, Steve and I were looking at it and going, holy cow, this is strong. And this is before we haven't even put it on the table. I'm like, Ghost Arcs didn't need a buff. They didn't need a buff to reanimation. They didn't need the Lich Guard. Yeah, there were certain things. Lich Guard and Praetorians, I'm glad they dropped in points, because nobody was using them. Tomb Blades, yeah, it's good that they got better. But then all of a sudden you get this carry detachment thing and all these formations, which are just ridiculous, especially when you combine them. And I want that to be balanced. And so we have to do that kind of internally. So we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place here. We're stuck with a game that we love and a game that we hate. And that's the same game. Because Games Workshop, let's face it, they suck at writing balanced and clear and unambiguous rules. They suck at that. What they're good at are two things. One, making awesome looking models, and two, writing a game that plays in a way that's actually really fun. putting balance aside, when you actually play 40K, it's fun. I've noticed other games that I play, there's certain mechanics that, while they're really tactical and they're really good for strategy and balance, are also less than fun because of the situations that they create. Where 40K, it's like you slap down a bunch of models, and there's a lot of tactics and strategy, don't get me wrong, but it's just fun it's a game that allows you to play lots of models and have a very cinematic game. So they're good at that. But the rules balancing is horrible. The rules writing is awful. The fact that there's even an argument about whether you can bring more than one spider in the Canoptech harvest shows just how bad they are at writing rules. Never in the history of all their codexes, as far as I can remember, in the past few editions, has there ever been a difference between a unit and a unit. Like, it says one Canoptech spider, and so people are like, it doesn't say a unit of Canoptech spiders, so therefore you can't bring more. But nowhere in any other codex that or any formation have I ever heard of it being limited without it saying specifically in the restrictions that it's limited. And I'm not saying that they should be able to bring more spiders. I'm just saying that that is a horribly written rule, because by writing that, it creates ambiguity. And that's just one of hundreds of examples that we could come up with of ambiguity within the rule set that creates a lot of problems. And then they do things like, now we have to wait to see how the Eldar play, so we can't give a final kind of judgment on how strong they're going to be, but they look like they're going to be pretty strong. And so what's going to happen is everybody's complaining about the Necrons right now, but give it a few codexes and they won't be nearly as powerful, because guess what? Destroyer weapons ignore reanimation protocols. And they're also AP1. So guess what will kill Necrons? Eldar. So there's a counter to the Necrons. It's the new thing. And then the new thing will come out, and all of a sudden everybody's going to have access to D weapons, and it'll be like the old flyers, where now everybody has access to flyers, or plenty of anti-flyer, or ways to deal with flyers. And so flyers are no longer the thing that auto-wins you a game. Just like vehicles are no longer a thing that auto-wins you the game. So they've always been messing around with the rules this way, and it is kind of annoying, but it is, we don't have control over these rules. And so we just have to kind of take whatever happens, and then if you like the game enough, then you just keep playing it. And not everybody plays Eldar, and hopefully the people who do play Eldar, kind of like Necrons, somebody who's played it long enough, they're like, okay, yeah, Decaying Detachment is too powerful. I'll only bring it when I know I'm going up against somebody who's very good and has a very strong list. Other than that, I'm going to go Combined Arms Detachment, or you can still bring, I don't think there's a problem with bringing the formations from the Decaying Detachment, because as long as they're not part of a Decaying Detachment, then they don't stack with that 4-up Reanimate and the Living Metal and all that other stuff. But bringing a Canoptech Harvest on its own, yeah, I can give Reanimate to everything around it, but it'll just be a 5-up Reanimate instead of a 4-up, and that's a big enough difference that it kind of balances it back a little bit. Maybe not enough, but a little bit at least. So yeah, so the fact that you think that Necron Death Star is so lame, the thing is, there's plenty of things in the history that have been too powerful, and so what you typically do, especially with a Death Star like this, is you ignore it. It's slow. It doesn't have fleet. It doesn't have anything to make it faster at moving or running. It could be delivered by a Night Scythe, and that can kind of make it a pain because it can kind of be delivered onto the field, but that's relying on reserves, so it might not come in. It doesn't come in until at least turn 2 if it comes in the Night Scythe, possibly turn 3, even a slight possibility of turn 4. And so if you're playing Maelstrom missions, I think that's the ultimate balancer there, is that it allows you to kind of ignore things that are too powerful and just go for your objectives, and that can often help you to balance the game or even win the game. So yeah, so that's my suggestion there. It's just like everybody's always getting upset about this, and I understand why. It is annoying, I will admit, but it's a game in the end. So let's have fun with it, and hopefully your local group, your club or your store, you're always going to have those players who will always bring the strongest list and actually say it's not the strongest list, and everybody else knows it is. So you just kind of hopefully not play with them as much, and you play with your other friends who will bring more balanced lists and have more fun with it. Necronomicon. Hey Matt, have you ever noticed how much plastic is wasted on sprues after you clip a mini out? There's probably enough plastic in a Space Marine sprue to make 2 to 4 more models. Do you think it would be possible for GW to set up a recycling program? Send in your leftover sprue and earn credit on the web store based on the volume of plastic. Do you think something like that would be feasible? Not really, because the plastic's not reusable. So they can't melt it down and reuse it. So it is just waste. And it's kind of the waste is a product of how the mold works. And so there's not much they can do to really fix that, at least as far as I know. Lord Corathon. Hey Matt, thanks for all the great videos. My question is thus: if Games Workshop asks which army, in your opinion, needed to support most, which army would you choose? What would you add to it or take away? I assume by needing support the most, you mean the one that's most underpowered and needs the best updates. I think orcs, Tyranids are suffering. I know they've been getting lots of updates, but the updates just haven't seemed to really give them what they need in order to be really competitive. But definitely orcs. No, I think orcs would be the big one. What are they lacking in? Well, orcs still have a lot of utility. They still have, they can mass. That nobody can roll as many dice as the orcs can roll, and that's there's no doubt about that. And so, what are they lacking? I don't know what it is. There's something about them that everything seems like it should work, but then when it gets on the battlefield, just doesn't quite deliver the punch that you would expect the orcs to be able to deliver. So maybe it's, I don't know if I would say flyers or psychic, because they can still play competitively. Just out of all the armies, maybe they're, obviously there's like Sisters of Battle, but I'm starting to think that those are going to become a secondary army. So if we're talking about the main factions, I think it would be orcs, but I'm not quite sure what I would do to fix them. Mickey Levy. Hey Matt, you mentioned needing to figure out how to get more views or money or conversion from Infinity videos, and I can give you a good tip about that. Get the rules right. I see a lot of comments about the Infinity community about this. Anytime people talk about battle reports, mini wargaming is mentioned as being paraphrasing. Oh, it's entertaining. This puts off. Oh, it's entertaining. This puts off potential viewers. Oh no. I just realized that. Maybe some science for Khrushchev and purifiers. I think when I printed these off, it cut off a lot of the comments. I'll be right back. I'm going to reprint these and get it right. Okay, I fixed it. So I'm going to repeat your question, Mickey Levy. You mentioned needing to figure out how to get more views, money conversions from Infinity videos, and I can give you a good tip about that. Get the rules right. I see a lot of comments around the Infinity community about this. Anytime people talk about battle reports, mini wargaming is mentioned as being, paraphrasing, oh, it's entertaining, but they get rules wrong all the time, so you can't learn from them or rely on them. I can only assume this puts off potential viewers, and it seems like something you could get on top of. Yeah, this is talking about getting rules wrong is obviously an ongoing thing that people keep bringing up. And I've talked about it a lot of times. Maybe I should do an FAQ for it, but I just know that there will be a lot of interesting comments if I just put up a video solely about that, because people get very passionate about us getting rules wrong. Now, first off, let me put that aside for a second. I think most people, maybe, I'm not sure about proportion, it's impossible to measure, but I'm assuming that we get an equal proportion of rules wrong in every kind of game we play, 40K, Fantasy, War Machine, and Infinity. And so if we're getting rules wrong in all of them, and we do get complaints about rules that we get wrong in all of these, then you can rule that out as the reason why one gaming system would get less signups than another. Because in all the games, we're getting rules wrong, and so we should be able to still compare from game to game to see which ones are more popular. I think the main reason why we get less views for Infinity is because there's less Infinity players. And while you might get this idea that there's a lot of Infinity players, and I'm sure it's growing, you can sometimes get this bias because you might be surrounded by the people that are interested in the same thing as you. So maybe at your local gaming club, 40K has totally gone out, and everybody's playing Infinity. And so to you, often what happens is a bias is created in your mind where you think that must relate to the entire world. You're not alone in this. This happens for everybody in everything in their life. As soon as somebody has 2 kids, all of a sudden they are experts for how everybody else should birth children, raise children, discipline children, feed children, and every other problem that parents might face. And we often have that problem. As soon as we have a little bit of experience in something, we project that onto everybody else and think everybody else is the same or should be doing the same thing as us. So there's not as many Infinity players. 40K is still dominant regardless of how much people complain about it. In fact, probably because how much people complain about it, that represents just how many viewers are out there, the less people that are out there. Like if Infinity had as many 40K as followers as 40K did, they'd probably be getting just as many complaints about model issues, rule issues, balance issues and all that kind of stuff. Because once you get a certain large group, then that minority of people who like to complain about those things, well, that becomes a larger number of people, because even if it's the same percentage. And so all of a sudden, because they're so loud, that can start to clog up all the communication on social networks, such as comments on YouTube or on forums or blogs or whatever else it might be. So we get this disproportionate idea. So I think the reason we get less signups for Infinity is simply because there are less Infinity players out there. Now, addressing the rules issue, yes, we get rules wrong. I know that people have complained about this. They've been complaining about it forever. And I do think we need to try to get as many rules right as possible, but I'm going to tell you that it is 100% impossible for anybody, anywhere in the world, to be able to get 100% of the rules right. I think my main thing is, I always say, is you might think you don't get any rules wrong, but record one of your games and put it in front of 10, 20, 50,000 people, and I bet you they will find several things that you did wrong, because sometimes you just miss things. Some people might be more prone to rules mistakes than others because maybe they don't have as good a memory, or because they rush through things, or for whatever reason. And we need to try to minimize it wherever we can. It's a simple idea of trying to improve the quality of the battle reports, but it's never going to happen that we don't get rules wrong. That's just never ever going to happen. You watch sports and people yell at the refs for getting rules wrong, for missing things that they should have seen, for making bad calls, or whatever else that might be. Like, every game is going to have this issue, and so you're just going to see it. You're going to see rules mistakes. And some people have suggested, well, you can take more time. It's like, we can't. We really can't. With the how rapid, like, think about how rapid everything is coming out. Eldar Codex is coming out, and it wasn't that long ago that the Admech Codex just came out, and it wasn't that long before the Necron Codex came out, and it won't be that long until this new Assassin's board game is coming out. Like, trying to stay on top of all these rules is in itself a full-time job, never mind everybody having to stay on top of the rules while they're trying to keep up a production schedule of making battle reports. So all I'm going to say is it is an unrealistic expectation to think that we will make videos without rules mistakes. Regardless of whether people are paying for the videos or not, doesn't change the fact that it is impossible not to make rules mistakes. Minimize them, yes, we should get to know the rules as much as possible, but really what you're watching when you're watching the battle reports is watching us learning the games. Like, we don't play games outside of making battle reports. And you might think, well, maybe you should. But then we would make less battle reports, and you would want more battle reports. So it's like, we could do 10 times less battle reports, and we do 9 games where we learn the rules, and then we do 1 game where we hopefully not get any rules wrong. And then you get 10 times less battle reports, but that battle report have way less rules issues. And obviously, I think people would rather have more battle reports. So that's really what it comes down to. A new codex comes out on Saturday. We do quick reviews on it the next week, and we start playing games with it, not off camera. We do it on camera. So things are going to be wrong. Even with established armies that we've played for a long time, they're complex. These rules are incredibly complex. So that is all I'm going to say there. We're going to get rules wrong. We're going to try to minimize them, but that is just the way it's going to be. And because we have so many viewers, more of those rules that we get wrong are picked out. So, and I'm sorry if that, I know for some people they're like, well, it just ruins the battle report for me when you get rules wrong. Does it ruin the game for you when you realize afterwards that you made a couple mistakes? Probably not. You're just like, oh, I made that mistake. Maybe there was some huge mistake that you're like, oh, if I just remembered that. But for the most part, we enjoy the games even when we make mistakes in the rules, whether it's board games, miniature war games, or sports, or whatever else it happens to be. So it's just part of the game is getting the rules wrong. Unless you're playing a game of chess where everything is so simple, or a game of checkers, you're going to have enough complexity that there's no way that our imperfect brains will be able to keep everything in order when you're thinking about a 100 to 200 page rule book, and then several army codexes and supplements, and it's just so many rules. It's so easy to get them mixed up or to forget things that you're supposed to do. All right. Mr. Pink Piggy, about Necron leadership, I totally agree with you, but why wouldn't all Necrons be a single blanket leadership? Why would an HQ have less self-preservation protocols than a warrior? Because the game is more interesting when you have the variety. the game itself, like forget about fluff, the game is more interesting when you have a variety of leadership. When everything's a blanket 10, then when your opponent's fighting you, they can't reliably use morale kind of things. They can't reliably use pinning or shooting them enough that they might run. Close combat becomes harder to make them run, especially with an army that's so resilient that they're just lucky to kill a couple. Because that was the way that you dealt with Necrons before, is you get in close combat with them, beat them, and then they run, and you overrun them, and boom, they can't reanimate. But now that's no longer the case. So it's more how the game plays. The game plays more interestingly when an army has a variety of leadership, that their low rank and file troops have a lower leadership, sergeants might have a higher one, and then you have your captains who have a higher one, and then you have your grand commanders who have their leader. That's where you get your leadership 10. Leadership 10 should be reserved for the big guys, the demon princes and the overlords and the space marine captains and the whatever, the ethereals of the Tau or whatever, and then they can, somehow they can buff the leadership of people around them. But that's just the whole chain of command thing that makes the game interesting. So it's just, for me, it's just to make it matter of making it interesting. Yeah, I've talked about fluff reasons why you could make the Necron Warriors a leadership 7, but that's more just an excuse. Because fluff reasons, you can make anything. As you can, the Tyranids could all be leadership 10. They're all bugs that don't care. So, but then that's why they're all fearless when they're in Synapse, right? And so you could fluff your reason, or fluff any reason for anything. The infamous nerd. Yo, Matt, glad to say after watching your videos on YouTube for over, I want to say 2 years, I'm happy to be a Vault member. Well, thank you, infamous nerd. Now my question, why haven't I ever seen any woman work for come in on a daily basis? Now I have seen, okay, are you asking, okay, maybe I'm going to correct that sentence. Are you asking why you haven't seen any women work for us? Now I have seen the rare one every blue moon. Is they not a big community of female, are there not a big community of female wargamers, or are they just intimidated by Dave and his chaos craziness? Thanks for showing me a new nerdy thing to love, and can't wait for more awesome narrative campaigns. I think it's just the way our market is. The miniature wargaming is, the majority is men. I'm not saying that women can't play it. I have no bias against that whatsoever. They totally are welcome to it. But the fact of the matter is that the majority, over 90% of our viewership is male, and that's represented when you go to any convention. You're going to see the majority male. Of course, there are female wargamers out there, but because the majority is male, then that means people that are coming in here are going to be male. So I think we're actually going to have, well, besides the game that Dave played against Wargamer Girl at Valhalla, we're actually going to have a female coming into play in a battle report next week against Steve, and so that'll actually mark our very first battle report in the studios with a female. But that's just because that's who decided to challenge us. Why? I can't speak for why the female wargamers that are out there that could travel.
This guy.
Oh yeah, because see, now Steve's making it something about about gender.
Would that be gender?
It's just without even realizing, he just said something that some people would construe as sexist.
No.
The only reason a woman would come in is because they want to see an attractive guy, not because they like wargaming, right? Right, Steve?
I'm done.
And of course, I don't think that's the case. Well, I think that she's coming in with her husband too. So it's even in this case, the one time that there is a female, it's coming with their husband. Why is that the case? You'd have to actually ask all the female wargamers. Why don't you guys go into mini wargaming and play? Maybe they'd have a better answer for you, because I can't answer that. It's a tricky subject though, because you have to dance around it, because just like what Steve just said, all of a sudden, as soon as we talk about gender or we talk about race, it becomes sexist and racist without even meaning to be. And so it's just, if I look at it completely objectively, the market as I see it is dominated by men. And when I say dominated, I mean there's more men than women, not that men are dominating and blah, blah, blah. See, even that, right away, somebody could take that as sexist. But it's just the fact that there's more men in this market than there are women. And so when you ask why we have so many men working here or coming in, and I would assume that that's the reason. Why we don't have any females coming in, that I can't answer. So you'll have to ask them. I know we have plenty of females who watch us and even comment on the Sit and Talks, so maybe they can answer that question. Toby P. Hi Matt, new player to Warhammer 40k. Oddly enough, I have been collecting for some time, but have only focused on playing in the last year after watching your shows and becoming a vault member. My question is regarding terrain. I know somewhere in the rulebook it suggests 25% coverage on a 6x4 table, but that doesn't really seem like enough. Perhaps it's more or less a definition of what does 25% coverage look like. More than a few times I've had someone tell me there was too much on the table. I try to use your videos as a loose guideline, which is going to be a variety of ideas there, as to how and what to set up. Even then I think there could be more. In a few games where my opponent indulged me, we set up a rough road-like system with smaller open spaces or lines of sight. Those games were really fun because it forced you to think and use tactics rather than charge and roll. So that's my question. What do you consider to be too much terrain? And why is there so much fear or resistance among players when it comes to using more of this magical terrain coverage? I think the people who have a problem with a lot of terrain are those either that play shooting armies and therefore want to be able to just kind of sit back and shoot at whatever they want, or aren't used to the tactical awesomeness that adding lots of terrain brings to the game. I think terrain is one of those good equalizers. Not that we can balance the game completely, we've already talked about how out of balance it is, but terrain really helps. If you're talking about how much 40k has become a shooting game, well, if you throw in tons of line of sight blocking terrain, that hampers the shooting quite a bit. And then they have to rely more on their tactics of being able to position and guess where you're going to go, and it becomes a way better game. I love the games where I set up one or two big line of sight blocking pieces of terrain in the middle of the board, and boy does that make the game hard to play. And I love it, just absolutely love it. It just forces you to play so different than what you're used to. And it hampers those sit back and shooting type armies, which are really annoying to watch and to play against. So yeah, how much terrain is too much? I don't know if there's too much terrain that you could put on the board. Usually, I don't know, I would say that you don't want them any closer than like 6 to 8 inches away from each other, but then maybe in certain clumps you will. So I just do it based on looks. I like there to be lots of terrain on the board, lots of places to get cover, because that's such an important part of the game. So I just put tons on the board, and then I know other people will put less on the board. So it's really just whatever you want to do. Got a few more minutes. Coyote. Hey Matt, I noticed a few times that you mentioned XCOM as one of your favorite games, and last week you said that you needed a break from it. I just thought I'd point out that there's an awesome mod for it available in case you don't know about it. It's more like an unofficial expansion, making the game more complex and diverse and longer. Hence the name of the mod, Long War. Since you're a strategist and probably enjoy tactical challenges and certainly enjoy options, you might enjoy this mod tremendously. I'll have to take a look at that. Because XCOM, it wasn't a short game, it's a long enough game, but the main problem I have with XCOM is replayability. That you can basically, when you play through it, every game should limit what you're able to do by the end of the game. Like when you look at the research tree, for example, by the end of the game you can get everything done. Which means you don't have a reason to go back and do it and say, this time I'm going to research more of the energy weapons, or this time I'm going to research more of the armor options to make my guys more survivable. Because in the game it's more just a question of what do I research first, and then by the end of the game everybody's maxed out on their research. The one thing that you can do when you replay it is focus on different classes, especially with the expansion adding in the mechanized stuff and the genetically modified stuff as well. That allows you more options, and so you can be like, this time I'm going to focus on having 3 snipers. This time I'm going to focus on having 3 heavy weapon guys. And this time I'm going to play and just to have like everybody be assault and see if that works. And then you find these new combos and things that work really well. So it did have replayability that way. But if they also had the research tree, kind of like how StarCraft 2 did it. Oh, it wasn't perfect. They had the right idea, where when you play through it, you're always forced between a couple options. Do you want this upgrade, or do you want this upgrade? You can never have both of them, but they're both good. As long as that's the case, as long as both options are really good, or in the case of StarCraft 2, not any of the expansions, but the Wings of Liberty one, you gain credits for winning certain missions, and you can upgrade your troops, but there's no way, you can't even upgrade half of them by the end of the game. And so what do you focus on? Do you focus on your infantry, or do you focus on your buildings? Do you focus on your aircraft, your your fighter, your flyers basically? Do you focus on your vehicles? What do you focus, or some sort of combination of that? And that allows you to have replayability. And I've done that with the StarCraft games. Like this time I'm going to focus just on infantry and have awesome Marines and Marauders and Firebats and Ghosts or whatever it is that you decide to take. And that's really cool, and it allows you to replay the game and have a different kind of enjoyment. XCOM has that a bit, but the research tree being that you can max it out every time you play, and with the way you build buildings below the surface, there's kind of a one way that's the best way to do it. And so yeah, you want to be able to go back and try different things. And so any game should have that. All right, one more question. Andy Smith. Matt, hi. Hi, Andy. You've talked a lot recently about how you particularly monitor Vault signups as the most important measure of success for video content contributing towards your business. I can absolutely see the logic in this. However, I would also suggest that somehow monitoring the content being watched extensively by existing Vault members is very important as well, as clearly retaining existing paying customers is a vital consideration. Theoretically, you could at some point start to achieve saturation in a particular marketplace, example 40K viewers, so the number of Vault signups starts to fall relative to the content for new games. 40K fans could still make up the vast majority of your Vault members. I know you will already be aware of this, but I thought it was worth pointing out for those who enjoy your business discussions and would ask this. What do you think are the best methods of monitoring this aspect of your business? Number of individual views doesn't tell you much about the level of enjoyment because people may stop watching before the end if they do not like the content. Can you measure minutes watched, for example? All the best from England, Andy. That is a very good point, and it's something I've been thinking about recently too, is that yeah, we do track very, very closely Vault signups per video, per playlist, per employee, per game, per type of matter or type of video, and we monitor all those things on a daily, monthly, quarterly, yearly basis kind of thing, just to see what kind of trends we can see. But I've also thought that the other thing to look at is on the retention side, what are people watching? I have a funny feeling that we'll probably find a correlation. The things that get the most Vault signups are also the things that get the most views. Can we track the view-through rate? With Vimeo, we cannot, unfortunately. YouTube does have a view-through rate tracking for their videos, which allows you to see, they call it engagement, of course, and it allows you to see how many minutes are watched on average per video. They even have graphs that show you the average drop-off point of certain videos, and so you can gauge that to say at what point do most people stop watching, and it might be when the game just finishes and you're doing your outro and all, that's when people drop off. That's very common. And you're never going to get 100% engagement where everybody watches the video right to the end. Not with the length videos we have. Maybe if we put out just 5-minute or 2-minute videos, you'd find that our engagement is much higher because, well, it doesn't take you very long to watch the whole video. So longer videos like what we put out will always have that kind of drop off. We can't really track that 100% with Vimeo, but I think still you're going to find a correlation between the number of views and the engagement. Sometimes you might get weird things if you could track both of those things and you realize that certain videos might get more views because of certain things but get less engagement. And because the title was really good and so that drew people in, but then they saw what was going on and they didn't like the video, so they stopped watching. So that would be important information as well. So there's lots of different things you can use to kind of track that engagement and track retention and all of that. It's impossible to know 100% why somebody signs up or why somebody cancels or why somebody doesn't cancel, but you can monitor the trends, and so that is one of them. And you're right, we do want to be tracking that, which is something that I'm going to be implementing into our reports. All right, well that is it for the free version of the Sit and Talk. Thank you very much for watching, and of course if you're a Vault member, you can click the link in the description below to go watch the next 30 minutes in the Sit and Vault. If you're not a Vault member, you can still click it, get a free 7-day trial, and go watch it right now along with every other video that's in there, although you won't be able to watch all of them. There's like over 2,500 videos right now, so it would take you a long time to watch every video. You could probably go through and click on each of them if you do it really quickly and up all the view rates, but obviously you don't want to do that. So go ahead and click the link below. Thanks for watching and happy wargaming.